Yes, morning viewers, and welcome back to State of the Nation. First of all, I want to apologize to you for not having this program last Sunday. You know, we normally come on the fourth Sunday of each month. But for last Sunday, we had a prearranged program, but our guest we had then could not have made it. He had to leave the country. So I had to reschedule with the station to have it being broadcast today. So here we are again, the State of the Nation, and I have two very upstanding gentlemen in this studio with me today. I have Mr. Vincent Alexander, no stranger to this program because he's the chairman of the Burnham Foundation. And I also have with me Mr.
Herbert Edwards.
Herbert Edwards. He has been a social activist around for quite some time. He has been in Guyana. He's also, and he will play a significant role in the topic we'll be looking at for today, the Guyana's People's Militia. We remember the Guyana's People's Militia. It's very much in the air right now. So we have him here today as a former officer of the Guyana, reserve officer of the Guyana People's Militia. And we'll be discussing that as well, and also giving you insight into what our upcoming activities are like to commemorate the birth anniversary in this sense, and death of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham. Added to that, we will be reflecting on the life of a stalwart social activist in this country, political and otherwise. Yesterday was his death anniversary, his 10th death anniversary, and we'll be looking at that as well. So before we start, I want to invite Mr. Alexander to update us as to the upcoming activities for the Burnham Foundation in relation to what activities are being planned. Of course, I know you have these things annually.
Thank you very much, Clayton. Good morning to the viewers. Today we are on the verge of February, the month of the birth of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham. 20th of February is his birthday. The Burnham Foundation traditionally has held a number of activities in that month to commemorate the life of the great son of the soil, Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham. So as we approach February, we'd like to bring to the attention of you, the viewers, the activities we have planned for next month. Those activities start on the 14th, Sunday the 14th of February. And they will start in the traditional way with the church service at the Kitty Methodist Church. Bright and early, February the 14th, 7 in the morning, Kitty Methodist Church. All are invited for this annual service to commemorate the life of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham. We choose that church because that's the church that he attended, a school where his father was headmaster, which has been named, in fact, after his father. And so we go there for worship on February the 14th. The activities continue on February the 19th, the eve of the birth anniversary. On February the 19th, we have our usual ceremonial opening of our conference, our annual conference, which takes the form of a symposium. We are finalizing the details for that. We're hoping to have a very august guest in attendance as the main speaker, and we will announce that shortly. So that will be on February the 19th. On February the 20th, we continue our conference with our business session. That will be February the 20th, and that will be held on the afternoon of the 20th, and the proposed venue for that is the Critchlow Labour College. On February the 21st, we go to Forbes. We have over the last 5 years, held a cycle race to commemorate the life of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham. That race started off initially by being a race from Georgetown to Belfield and back. 3 years ago, we extended the race to include Lyndon. 3 years ago, we extended the race to cover then Georgetown, Belfield, Georgetown. 2 years ago, we extended it to Linden, Georgetown, Georgetown, Belfield, and back to Georgetown. And this year, we are planning to go to Berbice. So the race is now going to be moved from a 2-stage race to a 3-stage race. So on Sunday the 21st, we're aiming to hold the race, stage 1, in Berbice, New Amsterdam, Rose Hall, and back. And all of these places we use are historic sites in relation to Burnham. We know that New Amsterdam, our second town, has always been one of the places where Burnham successfully contested his party elections. We know Rose Hall is one of those towns that came into existence under his regime after the 1970 amendment of the Municipal and District Councils Act. So that's a historical place in the life of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham. So on the 21st, from 7 in the morning, New Amsterdam to Rose Hall and back. This year, the 23rd, there will be no traditional Mashramani activity. So we have chosen that day as a day when we will hold the second stage of the race. And that second stage of the race will be from Linden to Georgetown in the morning of the 23rd. 7 o'clock from Linden to Georgetown, to Homestretch Avenue. And then in the afternoon, the third stage will be held. And that will be from Georgetown, Ocean View International, to Belfield, where Burnham lived, back to Ocean View International. And so we're putting all those cyclists out there who have supported us in large numbers in the past on alert that this is what we plan for February in terms of the race. To bring the curtains down, we will have our concert on February the 28th at the Theatre Guild. We have traditionally either in December or February, in some form or the other, held a concert to commemorate the life of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham and to make some contribution financially to the work of the Burnham Foundation. This year the concert will be held on February the 28th. So all of our fans, some of whom were asking about the concert in December, we put you on notice that the concert this year is in February, and the actual date is February the 28th, the Theatre Guild. So those are the activities the Burnham Foundation will be involved in for the period of February to mark the life of late Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, in whose name this foundation has been established and whose legacy this foundation seeks to keep alive.
Well, there you have it, viewers. The chairman of the foundation, Mr. Alexander, no other person, giving you full details. And I'm aware that over the past few years, they have conducted and have held these activities very successfully. I want to encourage our viewers, those of you who know this man, know about his work, join us on those dates outlined. The 14th church service we have on the 21st, the 20th, and then on the 28th we have the concert. You know, our concert, the first ever concert we hold, when that was held at the Theatre Guild, the persons who attended said that it should have been held at the Cultural Center because it's not a Theatre Guild event. People should pay $2,000 to go, and we just asked for $500. But because of the quality of the performance, I'm encouraging you again, come the 28th, join us in the program of activities to commemorate the life of this great son of Guyana. I want to move quickly. One of our most active social activists in this country, yesterday was his death anniversary, Mr. Ronald Waddell. And I should tell you, Vincent, Ronald and I sat in the same bench at the University of Guyana on the group side where I did economics, and I know of his activities, I know of his commitment. There were people who tried to stain him in a number of ways, but I remember him very fondly. Ronald has been a person who believed in the right of every kind of citizen to express themselves in spite of what. And he knew that things were not going right in this country under the past administration. He tended to stand up towards them, and for those things, in my view, I think he was cut down. And I remember him very fondly. I'd like to invite you to.
Yes, Clayton, yesterday was the 10th death anniversary of the late Ronald Waddell. Ronald Waddell's life signified a person who sought to struggle for justice, a person who recognized at the time the state of the African Guyanese and sought to assist in rectifying the historical injustices and the injustices at the time that were being perpetrated against African Guyanese, and a person whose life was cut down like so many other lives at that time. But I think Waddell stands out as the beacon in this morass of young African Guyanese whose lives were terminated by the state. And one has to make that point, that all evidence now points to the state being the terminator and the collaborator in the termination of the life of Ronald Waddell and so many others. And indeed, at this time, the most we could do to pay tribute to Ronald Waddell on one hand is to continue the work that he did, working among youths, exposing them to education, working among citizens in ventures of self-development. So we need to continue doing those things in the name of Ronald Waddell. But we also need to continue the struggle for justice, the struggle for identification of those who are known, who are both the authors of this hideous crime against humanity and against Waddell in person, and those who actually executed the crime on behalf of those authors. We are seeing day by day more information is becoming available of where this all started, who are involved. We've heard recently that the state is seeking to get the statement of Roger Khan, because in that statement reference is made to this heinous crime as well, so that they can proceed to cleanse this nation of all of those who would have perpetrated this evil against humanity, and I dare say against African Guyanese in particular, because it's only if we cleanse ourselves of this period of our history that we'll be able to move forward collectively as a nation. These are things that have divided us significantly and continue to divide us, even as those who perpetrated pretend now to be those who are the keepers of the gate in relation to justice and development of this country. So we would like to take this opportunity to once again give our heartfelt support to the bereaved 10 years after relatives of Waddell, to his soulmate, who incidentally seemed to have established a pattern because her father was buried and told yesterday as well. So his father seemed to have come along and signified the sad moment of her life by departing when she's commemorating the death of her soulmate. So we extend our comfort to her at this time, and we join with all progressive Guyanese to continue the struggle for the identification of those who created mayhem in this country a while ago, and to ensure that Guyana never returns to that state of affairs, and that all Guyanese are liberated, and that the likes of Waddell are held up high as those who sacrifice even their lives in the struggle for liberation.
Well, that's a whole lot, Vincent, and I want to thank you very much for expressing those views. I myself need to express sincere condolences to his soulmate, you describe her as, to on this date, because Ronald Waddle is a guy I know believe in justice, fair play, and to be cut down in this way is really heartening, and I agree that those of us who remain should continue that struggle for things that are right, things that are fair in this society.
You know,
I would open the lines.
If you allow me, before
Yes.
you go on, last night there was an interesting program on Channel 9 to commemorate the life of Ronald Waddle, a program in which Barrington was one of the panelists, Ugunse was another, and Corlett. And in that program there was significant revelation, I would say. A revelation of the circumstances surrounding Waddle's involvement, a revelation of some of the activities of that era starting in 2002 with the jailbreak that are critical parts of our history that we need to know and to lay bare and to contextualize the involvement of people like Ronald Waddle. I would therefore like to reach out to the persons who sponsored that program and to ask for that program to have a number of repeats during the course of this week and probably next week, so that the Guyanese public can start to get a real insight about not only the life of Ronald Waddle, but the circumstances of Ronald Waddle's involvement after the jailbreak. I think it's a real important aspect of our history, and we need to lay it bare, to contextualize and to understand the causations of the things that took place in 2002 and after, and to start to understand who were responsible for these things. You know, every day things are coming to light. I read this morning Freddie Kisoon making a comment about the person who's been charged for the robbery of Baroda Bank. And that person has been now identified as someone who was a presidential driver.
Yes, I think I saw that.
And was involved in the mischief perpetrated against Freddie Kisoon. We need to lay all of this bare, cleanse the soul of the nation, so that we can now move forward uninhibited by a dark past.
Very interesting. Some Guyanese try to bury their heads in the sand like the ostrich. We know that these things happen, and some people trying to tiptoe around it by explaining it away. You cannot. And I agree with you, these things need to be made known. And I hope that the sponsor of that program, I haven't seen the program, but I'm hoping that they can air it again a few times so that people can know these things, because the death of Ronald Waddle really rocked this nation very, very deeply. And now that information is coming out in relation to the circumstances and the situation surrounding his death, I think it needs to be made very clear, bare to the nation what actually happened. I am going to be opening these lines later on in this program, but our main topic today is that of the Guyana's People's Militia. That is in the air. The president has announced that he will reconfigure and re-establish, rejuvenate the Guyana's People's Militia once again. That is ongoing, and I have with me in the studio a former officer of the People's Militia, Mr. Herbert Edwards. Eddie, I know you've been around for quite some time, and first of all, I want you to give our viewers an insight. Why a Guyana's People's Militia? Why?
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, listeners. Now, the rationale behind the Guyana People's Militia started since our independence, 1966. During that period of time, we had political unrest.
Mm-hmm.
between the two major parties. Now, on that, there was a disagreement between Chetty and Burnham on this PR, the proportional representation, and first past the post. Now, this was a serious rift, as a matter of fact, and it is during that rift that Venezuela decided to make their first claim here. Now, the Guyana People's Militia had to be formed because of these series of events of perpetration by the Venezuelan people, by the Venezuelan government. Now, on the eve of our independence, they made this claim to Essequibo. Now, it must remember that Joe Burnham, I want to make this thing clear. This is not a political statement. I'm not representing Mr. Burnham in this case. I'm just stating the facts.
But that's what I want you to do.
There were 3 signatories to this Geneva Agreement. And we were not an independent country. We did not get our independence yet. It was the eve of our independence.
Eve of independence.
The signatories to that was Britain, Venezuela, and Burnham was Prime Minister, signed at the bottom.
As potential Prime Minister.
No, he was Prime.
He was Prime Minister.
Premier.
He was Premier. But we were not
Independent.
we were not independent.
Yes, correct.
So he had no, as I've formerly said in a book that I wrote, that he was just along for the ride. He had no more power there than Jagan had when he was in office. Now, when that thing was signed, that same year, the Venezuela, after it was signed now and the British had left and we were now independent and say we're free, etc., there it was, the Venezuelans invaded Ancoco.
Laying claim to our territory.
They didn't just lay claim, they invaded it.
Yes.
And up to this day, they're residing.
They're still there.
Yes, they're still there in our part of Ancoco. They're there from them to now. It started then. And then there was a series of other events. For example, in 1968, there was this Rupununi uprising. Valerie Hart was the leader. She went across to Venezuela. They gave her guns, they gave her training, etc. And then she came over back, and they killed some policemen, and they killed a civilian. But the GDF went down there subsequently, and they chased them over. But then the idea was for her to take over that part of the thing, and declare herself governor of that area.
That's part of Region 9.
Yes.
Region 9. Okay.
That was one a conspiracy of the Venezuelan people, the Venezuelan government. But then, in 1976, that it culminated in one of the most atrocious crimes we had against the Guyanese people. There was the Cubana air disaster.
That's right.
11 Guyanese were killed. It had Cubans and it had Koreans.
Koreans, right.
The only good that thing did was it brought the Korean people, the Cuban people, and Guyana knit closely together. It is in that year that the Guyana People's Militia was formed. It was decided that it was necessary, seeing that they were going so far.
With all these acts and so on.
Yes, and then they were making statements saying that they were still making statements, still making claims, and they were and we knew that they were good. The government of the day felt that they're a definite threat, and that they will probably invade our country. So we had to prepare. Now this, but the militia the Guyana People's Militia was different to any other reserve in the sense that Mr. Burnham declared that the slogan, every citizen's a soldier.
Every citizen a soldier, I remember that.
So when we met him, we wanted to know, what does he mean by that, every citizen's a soldier? So we asked, what about the little old lady who can't drill, she could hardly walk? He said, well, that little old lady will put letters into envelopes and do such odd jobs.
Yes, yes.
What he was saying that every single citizen could make a contribution. He didn't mean that every single citizen would drill.
Yeah, and wear a uniform on the road.
No, he didn't mean that. What he meant is that all would be involved.
I remember very clearly the early days of the claim by Venezuela, the 1899 arbitral award, which they said was null and void, and they're claiming that. I always tell people that that issue is not a conflict; it's a dispute, because they have never established that anything to prove that this territory belonged to them. But because that was a situation that was settled since 1899. At this point, I want to bring in you, Vincent, because my friend, Mr. Herbert.
But before you go, that word dispute. I did a book on the Guyana Venezuelan board issue, and my good colleague here, we were Scotties in it.
Yes.
Had to explain to me that the dispute has ended. It ended in 1899.
That's right.
But what we have now is a controversy as a result of their claim. Okay.
I like that. Yeah, Vincent, that's a very technical but very accurate explanation.
Thanks to Mr.
Yes, always looking at the fine points. Vincent, Guyana's People Militia.
Yes, Clayton. Guyana's People Militia, in a sense, was a part of a slew of things that Burnham did to maintain the territorial integrity of Guyana. One of the first means of defense of a country is occupation. If you don't occupy, it's like they say they have, if you don't use it, you lose it.
If you don't use, you lose.
If you don't occupy your country in the face of aggression, it becomes easy for the aggressor to march onto your territory. So Burnham did a number of things. National service was one. It's multifaceted. It was intended to help young people in terms of acquiring skills and so, but it was also intended to establish communities in the hinterland,
border areas,
and therefore pursue this policy of occupation, even as you provided job opportunities and so for young people. Militia, as every personal soldier had a number of facets.
That was a popular slogan, every citizen a soldier.
On one hand, it meant that you had a relatively small army, a relatively small population, that you have a reserve. So in case the army has to be exclusively engaged in border defense, then the other activities of the army, the regular functions, could be carried out by the reservists, wherever they were across the country. So it was going to boost the strength, the numerical strength of the defense force in relation to the activities of the defense force. Every citizen soldier, as Eddie correctly said, was also a concept about how you could get every Guyanese to be mobilized in defense of Guyana. And not necessarily meaning every Guyanese would become a reservist in uniform. But first of all, the idea that you're a soldier, you're defending Guyana, would lend to the kind of unison of the Guyanese people that would help to repel any attempt at invasion. It would lend a kind of patriotism that is required in the face of aggression. But it also meant that if you have every citizen a soldier, that we can also have pockets of reservists, not only in Georgetown, but across the entire country. And so you will have the capacity for more surveillance of your border, more border patrols, a more astute alertness on your borders, where you needed to be alert to ensure that the borders weren't penetrated, because there's more than one way of penetration. You can have penetration by raw invasion, but you can also have penetration by planting people in your communities
on the border
to cause all sorts of disruption, civil unrest and things like that. And then to have the invasion take place as if to rescue this unsettled area.
Situation.
But if you had every citizen a soldier, beyond being just military, but being conscious, being patriotic, being aware of the threat, then you were in fact mobilizing the entire nation in defense of your country, in preservation of the country's integrity in the face of aggression. And I think it's important to note in this question of every citizen a soldier, notwithstanding what some may say today, this was one instance when all the political parties gave support
Today.
to this policy of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham in recognition that as Guyanese we had to come together to defend what was ours. So a part of critical support was support also for the establishment of the militia, clearly understanding the objective of the militia was not to do with anything internal. It had to do with making sure we could defend our territory, making sure that we were at one as Guyanese in the face of foreign aggression.
I think that's very important in relation to what happened then in the country and what the Guyanese people need to understand in relation to the establishment of the Guyana Street Militia. Herbert, you have made a very significant point. You have given me a framework within which the Guyana People's Militia was established and what happened then. I do remember as well, Forbes Burnham, when we became independent, made some key kind of visits to both kind of Venezuela as well as into Brazil and into Suriname. Those kind of visits was significant in the sense that he needed to establish the need for good neighborly relation. But then that didn't happen in relation to our Western neighbor because they started to act in a way that caused him to establish the Guyana Street Militia. Today, I've heard that the president have announced that he will resuscitate, rejuvenate, reconfigure the Guyana Street Militia kind of once again. How you see this re-establishment of the People's Militia and its role now in relation to all that has happened before?
Well, first I'll tell you why the militia came into that state and why it is necessary to reestablish it. I understand the president's rationale. Again, I'm not representing the president. I'm just telling the facts as I see it from the military point of view. When we had this BG volunteer force.
Yes.
It was, and you had militias before this, but the last one we had, the last resort for the army was the BG volunteer force. And for some reason they decided afterwards, the government they decided afterwards to link the BG volunteer force into second battalion and make it part of the army.
The Guyana Defense Force.
Yes. When they did that, it means that the GDF was without a reserve. Because it was no longer reserve. It was part. It was found over a period of time that when we found ourselves into problems, it was realized that the Guyana People's Militia did not have a reserve. There was no reserve. And so they formed this reserve. But then, as time passed, the chief of staff at that time, the 70s, decided that they were, I think it was 1997.
97?
Yes. When they decided to take the Guyana People's, the then Guyana People's Militia, which was inactive for quite a while, and rename it 2nd Infantry Battalion. And instead of being an independent body, it was now
absorbed into
the GDF. They were doing the same thing. They were making the same error that they made several years ago.
Okay.
So now this new, the new
Second
president.
Infantry. Okay, yeah.
Incidentally, the brigadier, he was instrumental in the formation of the Guyana People's Militia, because all the officers at the time, I remember, we were interviewed by him. There were 3 persons interviewing us: Colonel Morgan, then Colonel Granger, and Major General McLean. So they were au fait with the rationale behind the militia. So now the brigadier is back. He knows this history. As a matter of fact, in my book that I've done, that my colleague here has been kind enough to edit, I have quoted heavily from his book.
From the president's book?
Yes.
Okay.
So he's fully aware of these factors. So he knows that once you have an army, you must have a reserve.
So you feel that the reserve, the establishment of this reserve,
yes,
will
and
be very important.
It must not be a part. You cannot, if you put it into the army, it becomes one because we're now 2nd Infantry Battalion.
Yes. And you
That's
say
the name.
that has been absorbed into the regular
That's-
army.
Yes, because they come under the army. In the past, the head of the Guyana Militia would report only to the chief of staff. But now when you absorb them, you have other officers.
Other officers over there, and officers.
And
in
you
the
no longer have your own budget.
Your budget is under the umbrella of the Guyana Defense
So what
Force.
is necessary now is to take the militia back out of there, put them under a commandant with their own budget, and get a chance and try to mobilize people, officers and recruits, etc. In those early days, we were not paid. I remember a certain, which I wouldn't call his name, but a certain senior officer said of the militia, they are mercenaries. But a mercenary is a paid soldier. A mark is another name for a soldier, a fortune. He joins any army, and you pay him. But when we answered that call, there was this hue and cry about the Venezuelan thing. We were not given any stipend. We weren't given any allowances. We didn't mind because many of us, some have come from the public service, some were teachers, some were professionals,
in their own way.
So the only thing we got is leave, because in those days the government was the biggest employer. I mean, they had Guy Stack, or like the place you could see called Guyana Stores. That was Booker's. It was nationalized, and there were a lot of places. So you got your leave, and you were allowed to come out
And be involved in the militia.
It was a 16-month course for officers.
I must tell our viewers that I'm going to be opening a line in a few minutes. You can make your calls in, call in, because we're discussing the Guyana People's Militia, its establishment, and currently we're discussing its role currently, what role it can play in Guyana today. I have Mr. Alexander and my friend Herbert Edwards with me in the studio today, and we will be trying to answer your questions and comments. If you need to make a comment, fine. Vincent, you wanted to say something on the People's Militia.
Well, there's also another aspect of the reservists. We know we have a Civil Defense Commission, and the Civil Defense Commission also would be able to call on the reservists in instances where there's a need for volunteers in the face of any natural disaster. For example, during the flood of 2005, we didn't have a militia to call on that were reservists. A militia also helps the Civil Defense Commission in times of any kind of disaster or crisis. So a reformation, a reinstallment of the militia provides that reserve force also that can work with the Civil Defense Commission. When you have a national crisis, it means the army can continue to do what they're doing, continue to patrol the borders, and then the militia can step in to do the kind of work required in the face of natural disasters.
Okay.
Now, but one should also note that the President has called for this re-establishment again in the face of Venezuelan aggression. So that one cannot forget that at all, that one of the major problems we are faced with is the Venezuelan aggression, which in small ways has already taken some physical forms under all sorts of guises, a helicopter landing somewhere and saying they mistook it and things like that. Now, a militia, every citizen or soldier, means you have conscious people, wherever, whatever happens, who are able to react in defense, not necessarily physical defense. If it only means passing on information.
Provide information, right.
If it only means not being cooperative with the aggressors and things like that. So in the face of what Maduro has done in terms of his declaration of ownership of territory and waters and all of that, I think it becomes even more urgent to get the Guyanese citizens back into that state of consciousness and awareness in the face of this aggression?
Well, I'm gonna be the devil's advocate on some issues now, and that came out when the president made that announcement. You know, they have some people who are very, very negative, I would want to say, in terms of the comments. When that was said, I'm glad that both of you have elevated the kind of concept to that level where it need to be recognized by all Guyanese that it's important for us to have this reservists, the Guyana's people, kind of militia, to fall back. And you have said in case of civil defense. And I must remind all of you that the lines are now open and you can make your calls. Morning, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning, my virtual slave. Some men are born great.
Hello, morning.
Achieve greatness. Yes, good morning.
Yes.
Yes, some men are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness trust upon them. Let them fall and Burnham. The list has been born great. And let me say this. Those of us who truly believe in Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham should recognize a character trait of his and live it for eternity and be prepared to die for it. The concept and content of the Guyana People's Militia solidifies that purpose and interest in our own resolve to defend our nation. And that's why I say sometimes that Arnold Christiani and Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham are synonymous with the truths that are self-evident. Goodbye, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Yeah, I was saying that I would want to be the devil's advocate. There have been some negative comment in relation to the president's announcement. Some people are saying he want to militarize the state and a set of nonsense. Some people are saying that they are now going to be taking people's children and putting them in the Guyana under the people's militia, and all sorts of things will be happening. No, what's your response to those?
Oh, I'll tell you. When we had that similar cry for the Brandish's militia, there was no conscription. It was voluntary. And after time, we mobilized about 5,000 people. Those of you in my age group and a few years younger can remember when you had these parades. You saw the Brandon People's Militia in droves. You want to know where they came from? All the
regions.
Yes.
Region 1 to 10.
It is not conscription. People come out.
Well, there are people who I know will volunteer, of course. There are a lot of people.
Let me tell something to my fellow Guyanese, especially those who live in the interior, those who live next to the Venezuelan government. It is the practice of soldiers, especially the infantry, when there's a war and the soldiers move through, especially if they have conquered that place, the soldiers at the end, they engage in some very, shall I say, unorthodox activities.
Unbecoming.
Yes, unbecoming activities. They don't treat you nicely. Your wives, your children, when they're coming up at the back there, they do what they feel like doing. You may think that, oh yes, they're liberating us. How can you think such a thing? And they knew, at least the Guyanese in those days understood this kind of thing. It had nothing to do with politics. Of course, there's some who would rally to the militia because they feel, well, okay, Burnham is our leader, we're going. But many of us, there are many people who went there who felt that, well, no.
It was a national kind of commitment to the nation, correct?
We had to join. So this idea about militarizing, etc., I don't know. I will not answer that. But what I will say, it is necessary at this point in time to have a reserve, and a large reserve, to back up the government today, whichever government comes into power.
Morning, on here. Morning.
Yes, good morning.
Morning, sir.
I believe bringing back...
Could you speak up a little louder?
Yes, I believe in bringing back the people militia is a very great thing for this country. You know, because the young people of today have doing so many things in this country, causing problems, and then the government after the ex-government after this and that. When the people and killing out people now, when they form a gang, phantom gang and that kind of thing. Look today, almost 400 or something of people disappear. Right, that is frightening. By Javier and all are frightened because the men can't do these things anymore, and they're willing to back in power. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your contribution, sir. Yeah, the People's Militia. People have been making all kinds of comment, and I know these are things because change, Vincent, I think I heard you saying that when you are accustomed to doing one thing and you introduce change. I see another call is coming in. Morning, on here.
Good morning to you.
Morning, sir.
I want to ask this question. Why is it that you have Forbes Burnham portrait in the background? When
Why?
it is that, years ago, the same American government was backing the Venezuelans against us. Now it is that the American government is backing us against the Venezuelans. And I'm quite certain if Forbes Burnham was alive, Burnham would not have had the Americans in this country, and a lot of them companies drilling for oil. What was the percentage that the government is getting from this thing?
No, but you're asking
No, I
three.
don't believe Maduro is the enemy.
Mhm.
I believe the enemy here. I don't believe Maduro is the enemy. I believe the Americans are the enemy. Maduro is not the enemy. The same Americans give weapons to Maduro, not to Maduro, but to the former Venezuelan government to fight Guyana in Burnham time and before they were against us. Now all of a sudden we got there for us.
All right, let me answer your first question. Why we have the kind of banner of Forbes Burnham at the back of this program. This program is called The State of the Nation, and it is sponsored by the Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham Foundation, of which I'm the host. And the other thing is, the other kind of question you ask as to why are we pursuing this issue in relation to the way we're doing it. I want to invite Mr. Alexander to make a comment in that regard.
Well, I'm glad you put the first thing to rest. Why is Burnham pictured there? It could only be there because this is Burnham Foundation. Now, we are talking about the militia, People's Militia. And we are talking about the defense of Guyana's
Integrity.
territorial integrity. Life is not a standstill. Things change. The constant in all of this is the defense of Guyana's territorial integrity.
That's right.
Maduro, notwithstanding what the caller says, and he could want to debate that for the rest of life, has made declarations that threatens the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of this country. And any patriotic Guyanese should understand that. Maduro continues to occupy half of Ankoko. So I don't see how you could call him a friend when he's perpetrating a wrong against the Guyanese people. Life doesn't stand still. America may be on one side or the other side from time to time. That's their position. We have one constant: the defense of our territory. If they are with us on the defense of our territory, so be it. If they're against us, so will be it. What will be constant, though, is that we will continue to defend our territory, and any group of people who see the wisdom in joining us, whether it be through diplomatic means or any means, to defend that territory, we will be pleased to have a relationship with them. This is a pragmatic approach to your life. We can have a dogmatic approach where you make somebody an enemy for life, even when the person may be supportive of what's good for you. That's dogma.
That's right.
And that can be detrimental to your cause. So we are not pro-Americans or pro-anybody. Burnham's position was non-alignment. And so that's a part of his legacy we like to underline, given the question. We are not aligned to anybody. A non-aligned state is a state that calls it as they see it. And so the Burnham Foundation would be advocating for Guyana to call it as they see it. Right now, as we see it, Maduro is an aggressor. Right now, as we see it, America's not backing Maduro. For whatever reason, America's voice seemed to be in congruence with our voice. And so we take it from there. If you want to discuss other issues, if you're an anti-imperialist and you want to discuss oil and so, you could discuss those things. But this border problem, this border controversy, is historical. It predates all of that oil story. It predates it. It has its own genesis. But the fact of the matter is, one thing has been constant from almost time immemorial. We've established boundaries, We know what territory we inherited when the British gave us independence, or when we gained independence, and we have to do all that's necessary to defend the territorial integrity of this country. In that context, you can't tell me Maduro loves us, because what he has done recently is no demonstration of any love for us.
Morning on here. Morning. Please take your television down. Yes, sir. Morning.
Y'all got any uniforms?
Hello?
Do you have any uniforms?
No.
We're not the state.
We're not the
have
state.
uniforms.
We're the Guyana Militia. We're discussing its establishment, its history, and its importance.
Just let me know as soon as you all decide to vote uniforms, where and when I could go and get a uniform.
All right.
I'm prepared to die for my country.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the spirit. And we're quite sure those in authority have heard, because they normally monitor these programs.
Excuse me. This question with America has rate our defense. The gentleman said that America at one time was pro Guyana and anti-Guyana at another time. They were never, to my mind, anti-Guyana in the true sense of the word.
No.
Even the time when Ronald Reagan was there, I remember the Venezuelan government appealed to him because Burnham started on a process that made the Western world angry with Chedi. Burnham started to nationalize. And I remember Vincent talking about critical support.
Critical support.
When Chedi saw that, Chedi said, okay, told his people, we'll support, but critical. We're going to watch him. But again, Burnham also went to Cuba, made friends with Cuba, something which the Americans didn't like. So, and then he also allowed Cuban troops to land here, pass through Guyana.
And in days of the liberation struggle.
And then when the Cuban aircraft crashed, Burnham said it was the CIA. It made them angry. It made Americans angry. They said, you called me a barefaced liar. And then they withdrew their charge d'affaires. It is on that stage now, the Venezuelan government asked Reagan to assist, because he said, look, Castro likes to sell his revolution, which was true. And as far as they're concerned, Castro and there are daggers drawn. Castro may want to go over there. But the American government knew that Burnham, neither Burnham and Jackson, would use troops here to go over to invade Venezuela.
Of course, we are a small nation.
We have no, we don't want any war with Venezuela. So although Reagan gave him 24 fighter planes, he did not sanction any attack here. They were angry.
Morning. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning.
Morning, sir.
I'm sorry to see where they don't think the brother on your left knows America. America has a long, long history.
Well, that is true.
Against other Europeans. The Spanish-American War gave them Cuba, gave them Puerto Rico. He doesn't understand these people. The world is not a nice world. It is not a nice world.
Yeah, but we have a right to defend in relation to this matter we're discussing.
But America used to have the oil in Venezuela. Understand that. They don't play with money.
That's economic investment that they invested. Yeah, nothing is wrong with that.
And the statements are clear. Anywhere in the earth that their investments are threatened, they will act. And they have done it. Overthrown governments, they don't joke. Maybe we don't understand that.
So what should Guyana now do that Venezuela is riling up?
No, the point is this. We were having a certain amount of peace in the Caribbean. There was Petro-Carib. That will finish. The new government is coming is the one who started.
Why Petro-Carib finishing?
It was not us alone. It was the rest of the Caribbean who was getting that help. But I'm saying that the economic war is on all the time, and that is the reason why America wants to get back.
Let me ask you a question.
Venezuela is the fifth largest oil producer.
You talking about America as if you're a good student of history.
I am.
Do you know of Venezuelans' expansionist tendencies in Latin America as well? Do you know about that?
But But listen to me.
Do you know historically
The point
about
we're talking
Venezuela
about
expansionist
is Maduro.
tendencies? Not I talk about Maduro now. I talk about Venezuela, period.
Yeah, the country itself.
Of the
They
expansionist
are Spanish
tendencies.
expatriates. They are Spanish expatriates. The people who were for Chavez them were not Africans and Amerindians. That's the point I'm making.
Venezuela got independence long before Guyana. And I'm saying, and if you check the history of Venezuela, after their independence, you will see their expansionist tendencies.
Because they're capitalists.
So if you want to take this debate into
In a different
more
direction.
holistic direction,
No.
don't isolate America.
I am not
Let's look
isolating
at all
America.
of the factors involved. We are dealing with one issue here: the defense of the territorial integrity
Of Guyana.
and what it takes at a given time to defend that integrity.
We will go in the frying pan if the government change. Not it, I mean in the fire we'll go if the government change.
That's another
Because
matter.
they're the ones who set it. Because this is not now this happened when Chavez them come in. We get an ease then. Chavez came here and said the Americans were training him to land on Georgetown. Not an Equibo.
But
He made that statement here. He
Maduro's
visited here.
an extension of Chavez.
Yeah, but the socialist people are looking after African and Amerindian people. That's why they don't like them. Elitism has to run every country according to the European private sector that runs the world. The world.
That is you're delving into some areas which we are not going to address. That is a big topic.
Okay,
And
get Europeans who talk on this, who have studied it, and they have evidence documented. The world.
all right,
thing is
we're
upside
running
down,
out.
you know.
We're running out of
No,
time
my
right now.
single question to you, with all of that fandango you get involved in, what do we do in defense of the territorial integrity of Guyana? That's a single
We have
question.
to unite our country and
But-
don't fight them, the smaller man.
That's what
Because the
that's what
smaller man
militia's
who has
about.
to defend.
That is the answer I'm looking
That
for
is what
because
the
that is what
militia
That should be a real man.
that is what the Guyana
Your mantra-
People's Militia is all about.
Okay, that should be our mantra for the 50th anniversary.
Thank-
Small man be a real man and national service.
That's
Serving the nation.
thanks for ending up on that note because
Okay,
that
thank
is
you.
what the Guyana People's Militia is all about.
Thank you. I
Bringing
agree
people
with you
together.
totally 100%.
All right, good. Thank you very much.
I think he misconstrued me, you know. I was talking about America's attitude towards Guyana.
Yes.
But he wants to talk about America's attitude towards the various
the
countries.
Latin America and other countries in the
No,
world.
I was just on against it.
I want to take this opportunity to thank our viewers. I see the lights are on. It means that our time is up. We've gone over 3 minutes. But I want to take this opportunity to thank our viewers for being with me this morning to listen to this program, the Guyana People's Militia Establishment. And when the call is made, be prepared to come out and support because we're going with the concept once again, every citizen a soldier. Every citizen must be on alert to make sure that you're prepared to defend your country, come what may. I want to thank Mr. Herbert Edwards for being with me today. Very interesting comments, very, very wide in his views in relation to this issue, the Guyana People's Militia. Your kind of final thoughts?
I would say to citizens that we mustn't get involved in what America is doing and what America isn't doing. What is important here is that your country is undergoing a crisis. There's no reserve. And all over the world, especially in the Western countries, there's a larger reserve than the regular army. You need a reserve so that when there's a crisis, the reserve is there. When we had floods in the past, the reserves took part with a joint operation. So I'm saying to you, you need a reserve, and those who can join.
Thank you. Vincent?
I would just say come follow the Burnham Foundation, and February is a big month for us. The 14th our church service at Kitty Methodist, the 19th our ceremonial opening and symposium, the 20th our annual conference, and we're going to be making forms available for people to join the foundation. The 21st to 23rd, the cycle race in New Amsterdam, Linden, Georgetown, and the 28th, our concert. Looking forward to seeing you.
Right. I want to thank you, viewers, for being with me this morning. And I know those of you who were trying to kind of get in, I saw the calls coming, but we cannot get all the calls in. But I hope that on the next program you'll be lucky. So I'll be with you once again on the 4th Sunday in the month of February when I bring to you once again the State of the Nation. I'm Clayton Hinds saying goodbye for now.